to welcome everyone here as we get ready to launch the first book of Michael Regis Sr. at 90 years, entitled Grenada after Fedon. Let us stand as we get ready to commit this afternoon session with a word of prayer. Almighty God, we thank you this evening for life, for living. You have granted us years here on this earth, and your word tells us that we should occupy till you come. The word talks about giving 10, and in your will and in your time you may add. We thank you, God, for Michael Regis Sr. Even at this stage in his life, he is able to occupy well and be of value and of use to our country. We thank you for everyone who's gathered here to participate in the launch of his book, and we pray that you'd be good and you'd grant grace and mercy to all the families who are seated here and at the same time supporting him in the launch of his book. We place everything into your hands, and we ask you to take charge and take control in Jesus' name. Amen. You may remain standing as we do our national anthem. You may have your seat. So it's not often that you have an author publishing his first book at the age of 90 plus. This is actually a unique situation that we find ourselves in with Michael Regis Sr. This book is actually a socio-political history of Grenada from a man who really has a unique perspective of Grenada in terms of its history, from Fedon through our first Prime Minister, Eric Matthew Gary, through our transformative Prime Minister, Maurice Bishop, to the present-day politics of Grenada. And now, let me tell you that if there's one gentleman, even at his age, who is really in tune with current affairs, whether locally, regionally, or internationally, it's Michael Regis. And it is not a surprise that he still has that drive and enthusiasm to decide that with all of his writings, he loves writing, he would publish a book. Brother Michael Regis has always been an active reader and writer, contributing to weekly articles in some of our newspapers, including the Grenada Informer and the Grenada Voice, and he did that for many years. So himself and the editors and owners, they go back a long way. But it's not just that. He was also involved in trade unionism for many years. As a matter of fact, he was an executive member of the Technical and Allied Workers Union, rising through to the position of vice president to the then Curtis Stewart in the early 1970s. So it tells you how much this gentleman has been involved in the life of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And of course, his profession then was working with what we now call Flow. Of course, they would have had several names before: Cable and Wireless, as an HR manager, Grentel, and I don't know if he got through to the Flow part. Maybe not. In addition, he has always had a passion for politics in Grenada and was affiliated to a number of political parties after the fall of the revolution. This book is a culmination of over 2 years, that took over 2 years to complete, and is the achievement of a dream come true for Michael Regis. Let's put our hands together and encourage him for what he has done. And it gives me a little hope, because I used to think I'm too old for that. Maybe I might write my autobiography, and maybe those of you who are sitting, you are not too old to decide it's time to write and put pen to paper so that people can know your history, your life, and what you have in mind. Nothing is better than being able to write. As a matter of fact, there's something that says the pen is always mightier than the sword. So on behalf of the Regis family, I want to say welcome to all of you, and we hope at the end you'll be able to interact with the book, maybe purchase one, a signed copy. He's going to autograph it, I'm sure, and I think we'll be able to put it on the shelves in Grenada. And as I said, that story, that achievement at 90 years old is something that we cannot sniff at. It's really, really historic. It's really good for Grenada. And maybe historian Angus Martin will tell us if there's anyone older in Grenada who would have written and published a book. There's one. So you'll tell us about that. But yes, so thank you again, all of you, for coming, and welcome, welcome, welcome. At this time, someone who knows Brother Regis for quite a while and has taken time off to come here, we'd like to welcome Mr. Richard Duncan to come and just to say a few things about his interaction and his socializing with Michael Regis. So let's put our hands together and welcome Mr. Richard Duncan, OBE, to the microphone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adams. Mr. Michael Regis, esteemed author. Mr. Adams, Master of Ceremonies. Former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas. Dr. Angus Martin. So Larry Lawrence. So Larry Joseph. Colleagues, friends, good evening. It is a pleasure to join you this evening for the launch of this remarkable book. After decades of articles in Grenada's various newspapers, especially the Grenada Informer, at age 90, our esteemed author, Brother Michael Regis, has compiled in a single space his thoughts and his insights into the history and sociology of Grenada that he has observed and researched over his lifetime. Quite frankly, I do not know what inspired or motivated Brother Regis to invite me to make some remarks at the launch of his book. Nonetheless, it is an honor I accept with all humility. Having said that, let us turn to the fact that writing a book is no easy feat. And I must ask you to join me, even though I have one hand, in giving a lusty round of applause to our distinguished author. Grenada After Fedon is a novel without a central plot, but one that meanders at a superficial level in some instances, but also delves in depth into many cross-cutting issues concerning the evolution of Grenadian society post-Fedon, i.e. after 1795. And it's interesting to note that you can find no one in Grenada with the surname Fedon, totally erased. Yet, a man of valor, a man of historical significance. Though he has not described himself as such, this work clearly confirms that Brother Regis is a political analyst extraordinaire and an exceptional sociological thinker. His writing style lends itself to easy, comfortable reading by all and sundry, which makes Grenada after Fedon an intellectually accessible work to everyone, from primary school up to university level. It is not overly analytical, it is not replete with dates and statistics, but nonetheless, it paints a rich and compelling picture of the evolution of Grenadian society that is easy to follow. I find it highly commendable that this work has no dominant biases, and instead, it is extremely rich in relatable interpretation of facts and events. Of particular interest is how Brother Regis treated with the notion of collective pooling of labor in rural communities, the Maroon, and the pooling of financial resources, the Susu, as central part of rural economic survival and development back in the day. The treatment of the idea that Grenada has curse that seems to be unending is particularly creative. This is what he did. He weaved into the narrative that when old people were disappointed in a disobliging, disobedient person, that person would be cautioned. Take care, old people drag their bam bam on you. He leaves the reader to wonder who dragged bam bam on Grenada. Moreover, quite cleverly, he did not say what, if anything, can be done to undo the curse that befalls you when someone drags the bam bam on you. That he has left for either Michael Regis Jr. to research and write, or for Richard to do. In looking back in time at the evolution of cuisine in Grenadian society, it was fascinating to see how Brother Regis dealt with the subject from a demographic standpoint. He carefully lays out why it is and how it is that using the mortar and pestle to soften food came about as a mainstay in some homes where there were elderly and aging people who, because of poor or non-existent dental hygiene, had lost all their teeth, and therefore the most appropriate means of allowing them to continue enjoying healthy, nutritious food was through the use of the mortar and the pestle. Extremely, extremely insightful. Let me take a moment to again commend Brother Regis for his commitment to the craft and for daring to give voice to perspectives that enrich our understanding of Grenadian society after Fedon. Writing a book requires discipline, persistence long before there is the launch, the glitz and the glamour. To bring a manuscript to compelling success is only part of the process. To share it with Grenada and the world is both a triumph and an act of generosity. Writing a book also requires a support system. Those who encourage, those who edit, those who illustrate, those who question, those who challenge, and those who generally support. So this evening, we also recognize the family, friends, mentors, and well-wishers whose belief carried this project to fruition. To Brother Regis, I again extend my warmest congratulations. Thank you.
So we're going to continue with a couple other folks who would come and say some things. So this time we'd like to call Mr. Angus Martin to also come and to give a few words. Let's welcome Mr. Angus Martin.
Hello, everyone. I stand on protocol already established. I would like to begin by saying to Mr. Regis, congratulations. I think as an author, it is a proud day when you get to put your thoughts between covers and hand them to people. So I really want to congratulate you on this achievement. I got a call. I was at the museum at the time. I got a call, and this gentleman said somebody told him he should talk to me. So Mr. Regis said, let's meet. And he came and picked me up, and we were going to go to lunch. And as we drove to the lunch, I realized I knew of him, that he was very good friends with an uncle of mine, and my uncle always talked about this good friend, Mr. Regis, but I'd never known who he was until that day. And that's how we got to know each other. And he would constantly call me and ask me questions about history and things like that. What I would like to talk about today, it's not specifically the book itself, but the writing of memoirs and the importance of the writing of memoirs. Memoir writing in Grenada is very young. It's, to be exact, 55 years ago. F.M. Code wrote a book, Bittersweet and Spice, These Things I Remember. He was the father of Bernard Code. And in 1970, he published that book, and that is basically the first autobiography by a Grenadian. I was in the US at the time, and I was going to school, and on my way to the subway going back home, somebody was selling used books, and that book just happened to be there. And I think it's actually the first book in my collection of books on Grenada that I have today. It was probably, since 1970, several Grenadians have penned their memoirs, and though providing stories of Grenada that inform us today of the past, we still have too few. Often repeated as an African proverb, the phrase, when an old person dies, a library burns to the ground. Because of the wealth of stories and experiences of a lifetime that is captured in our aged people, the experience of age. For me, this book is really welcome in the sense that memoirs are important because it tells a story of our past. It tells a story of how we got to where we are. And as a historian, it's my way of finding out people's personal experiences. I may do research and go into archives and search for data and dates and other statistics, but you may not be able to have access to people's personal stories unless they write them. As such, I applaud Mr. Regis for the publication of his memoir, the story of his 80 years on this Isle of Spice. The narratives begin with the folkloric telling of one of the most dramatic episodes in Grenada's history, Fedon's rebellion in 1795-96. It is an interesting day to begin his story because Grenada goes back at least 150 years before that, but then to 2,000 years before that if we go back to the Amerindians. I often take umbrage to the tourist caps that they sell in the stores that says Grenada established 1498, because I think it's a distortion of our history. That it should be Grenada established 385 AD, around then, because it negates the history of the indigenous peoples that lived on Grenada actually for much longer than we did. We have so far. Mr. Regis' stories of the past, our past, as he writes about how we lived, how we ate, how we cooked. It is his memories of the 9 decades of his life celebrated in these pages. Stories of yesteryear, stories of folklore, stories of the rural environment. He says, quote, 2 centuries ago, our forefathers taught us how to live a better life. They were poor, but they cared for each other. The country spirit was born, the community spirit was born in their time. We all still talk about Maroons, the Maroon spirit still celebrated in the sister island of Carriacou. The memoir is a call to the better parts of who we were, and at least knowing these stories can help us to explore that past and remember. If we don't tell stories, these stories of us, how will future generations know anything about the past, their past, the stories of how they got here? We are already at a disadvantage not having stories of our island ancestors, our enslaved ancestors and their descendants who created much of our culture. Mr. Regis has guarded here the stories of his lifetime, the tales of his lived experiences, so that we can learn of the past, maybe reminisce for some of us, and hopefully pass on to the next generation, so these stories of who we are not forgotten. They are vital for the future stories that will be told of the Spice Isle in future formats. In closing, I would like to offer my deepest congratulations to Mr. Regis on the publication of his memoir, this wonderful selection of the stories of his life he felt were important to take the time to record for us, to share. I hope it is an inspiration to us all that it's never too late to tell your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, for your very insightful words. And at this time, we'll have one more person who will come and speak as it relates to Michael Regis and their interactions and their affiliation and association. At this time, we'd like to call our Honorable Past Prime Minister Tillman Thomas. Let's put our hands together and welcome Honorable Tillman Thomas, Past Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Michael Regis, Dr. Angus Martin, Mr. Richard Duncan, former Speaker of the House, Mr. Lawrence Joseph, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be part of this launching here this evening. And the title of the book, as I say, from Grenada after Fedon. And we know lots have happened over the years. So let me begin by really congratulating Mr. Regis on publishing this book. We all need to know our history. And it is good that we get different persons writing about our history, because Mr. Regis' perspective may be different from another person's perspective. I know Mr. Regis in the political arena, as a matter of fact. Mr. Regis and I were members of the NDC in the early days. That's where I got to know him. We were part of the executive during the George Brizan era. So when I came here and I saw the title of the book, I wasn't surprised. I knew it had to be something of a political nature. And we all know that Grenada has had an exciting history. Those of us who live in the 60s, when Eric Gary came in and he waged his struggle against the plantocracy, exciting period. Between the 60s and the late 1970s, protests against the same Eric Gary, excitement in Grenada. 79 revolution, excitement, and different things happened. I mean, 42 years ago, we all know what Grenada was like. So this book should be an interesting book based on its title and what took place in Grenada. So again, I say I know Mr. Regis to be a man of principle, a man who, debate the issue, to stand up for what he believes in, and I expect that, that this book would be create very interesting reading for all of us in Grenada. And again, I want to emphasize the point that it is always good to document, to record our experience, whether it's politics and different aspects of our society, because there are times strangers write our history for us and we do not get the true meaning, or we do not get the essence of our history. But when we have a person like Mr. Regis who lived the experience, a person who was in the trade union movement, was in the political arena, knows a lot about Grenada, that should create interesting reading. So again, I want to commend Mr. Regis, congratulate him on publishing this book for the people of Grenada, and I'm looking forward to reading it with excitement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tillman Thomas, former Prime Minister of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. I think this is the moment, this is the hour, and this is the man who is going to come and give us some remarks and tell us about his journey as he got to this point of being able to publish his socio-political history of Grenada, Grenada after Fedon. So just before I welcome him, there's a gentleman here that I want us to really acknowledge. His name is Dwight Parson. Dwight has been integrally involved in ensuring that Brother Michael Regis is able to get from just manuscript to book. And I can tell you the amount of work that Dwight has been able to put in and to assist in order that we get to this point. It's no mean feat, and we really want to acknowledge Dwight. Dwight, take a stand so that we can see who Dwight Parson is. So Dwight, really, we want to thank you for all that you have done so that we can get to this point. Let us now put our hands together for Brother Michael Regis as he comes and gives us some anecdotes and some of his thoughts as he got to this point. Okay, before we take the man of the hour, there's someone who is listening who has had a very interesting interaction with Brother Regis and also her experiences and her writing. And her name is Miss Kim Evans, who I think is in the United States. And she was invited to be part of this book launch. And so, is Kim, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. At this time, we are not seeing you, but of course we can hear you. And so I'm going to ask our audience to give you a lusty round of applause, and we'll ask you to go ahead and to speak to what is happening today as it relates to the launch of the book, Grenada After Fedon, written by Brother Michael Regis. So Kim, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so sorry. It's almost midnight in England. So if my voice sounds very husky, I do apologize. So my name is Kim Evans. I'm a former student of St. Joseph Convent. My interaction with Mr. Regis is I was quite honored and surprised when I got a phone call from my aunt saying that I say young man, but I know he's an elderly man, but I would say young man, would like to reference my article in his book. So I would like to express my gratitude for Mr. Regis for giving me the opportunity to participate in his launch of this book, Grenada After Fedon, and also referencing my article, The Gate, which he found online. This article was inspired by a conversation I had with my aunt, Josephine McGuire, who is an editor of the Grenadian Voice newspaper. In her yearly quest to get articles for October, every October she's going around getting new, fresh articles. And it accounts for the experience I had at that time in 1983 as a school child in Grenada. It really talks about the day we actually, as school children, left our schools and goes off to free the Prime Minister from his residence. And as I said, I was quite surprised and shocked that Mr. Regis found it and wanted to reference it in his book. So really, it was a really traumatizing experience for me to recall all the events to write the article. But it has brought closure for me, and it has brought some healing, I suppose. And I really do feel honored, surprised, and that the article was discovered and it was actually deemed significant enough to be included in Mr. Regis' work. I would like to thank you, Mr. Regis, and I would like to also compliment you on your embarking of such an adventure at your age. I do hope that you will be motivation for other people. And as the saying going, an old man dies, but the book is lost. It's extremely important for us the older folk, to preserve Grenada's history and document in books, online, media, anywhere we can, and memoirs, for the future generation to discover and learn from, because at the way things going, if we don't get our history out about Grenada, it will be lost. So it's really, I was really chuffed actually, and I was really inspired by him as well, of what he's doing. It might inspire me to go ahead and write a book as well, not just an article. I'm really inspired. So once again, Mr. Regis, I would like to really wish you all the best in your venture, and I hope you inspire most of us, a lot of us, and other people to continue to do writing and never too old to do something so inspiring. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being patient to putting me on Zoom as well. I really highly appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. Let's put our hands together and give Kim for taking her time at this time in London to say something about the launch of Michael Regis's book. Thank you very much. And Kim, I hope you get a good rest now that you have completed. So, once again, here come the man. We're now going to entertain. We're now going to have Michael Regis come and say something about his journey, his journey from there to now and being able to publish Grenada After Fedon. Yes, sir.
Right. Let's see. That's good for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yes, your turn.
Good evening, everyone. You know, it's a very long time ago that I stood before a mic. That was when I was young. I was very energetic then, and now, well, you know, when old age catch up with you, there's a lot that you cannot do. You'd like to do it, but you just can't, you know, because well, you may tumble down, you know, and things like that. Now, I grew up in a community that was very poor. In those days, you know what our people were like, uneducated. Maybe one would say, the only thing about them, the good thing I had to say about them, those people in those days, they loved each other. It's not like where we are today, where we have fighting, stealing, and things like that. I grew up in a community where, you know, fruits and things like that were free. People never purchased fruits, vegetables, or anything like that. Our parents, all you needed to do was to ask, you know, and they received. So I loved the people then. As a matter of fact, I didn't have a choice because my mom loved the people, and I was brought up in a way that you could only do good. You couldn't do evil. So what I remember doing whilst I was in school was I read a lot. And not only reading, as Brother Adams has said, history was one of my favorite subjects. So because of that, in those days we had a book called the Royal Reader. It was a very good book. It gave a lot of stories and told people how to live the good things in life and things like that. So I grew up in that atmosphere and loving history. I read a lot, not only the history books, because in those days the history I learned was about European history and Britain, and everything was about Britain. And every book people wrote, said anything, had something to do with British influence. So we were always the underdogs, as you know, when we grew up, everything was Britain and things like that. And I started reading and reading. After I left primary school and then I went to secondary school, it was the same thing. And I tell you what caused me, as a matter of fact, to become, let's say, fluent in English and understand things like that. I remember, a lot of you may not remember about him, but there's a person by the name of T.A. Marshall. And he was the editor and owner of the West Indian newspaper. And when I left the country to come to town to be at presentation, I never saw a newspaper. That was the first time I saw a newspaper, T.A. Marshall. And because I loved reading, I remember that, well, to tell you what, just go back a bit. T.A. Marshall owned and operated the West Indian. And that newspaper was published daily. It was a daily newspaper, every day. And he used to have people delivering it early in the morning. So I used to wake up very early. At 6 o'clock in the morning, T.A. Marshall newspaper was at the door, and I was waiting for it because I had to read it before I go to school, even before I ate. So I continued reading T.A. Marshall newspaper. There was another person where I lived, the woman I lived, she had a son, sorry, it was an adopted son by the name of Gordon. He used to work at a lawyer's office, and I've never seen anybody read like him. And I thought perhaps we were rivals in reading, because he used to read, he borrowed books, especially things Perry Mason. I always loved law, so I loved Perry Mason. So I used to pick it up on a morning, and Gordon had to bring it back maybe in 2 or 3 days. So sometimes I had to read all night to finish read, to know what it says and things like that. So I was captivated by reading. And then in school, it was the same thing. The essays, when the essays were given to me, well, the whole class, because I was constantly reading, I guess my English developed, and I was able to write essays very well. So much so that the person responsible for, English, used to take my essays and read to the farm and say, well, why couldn't you all do that? So that was who I, as I say, grew up in. So I'm telling you all of that to show you that it was my reading that brought me to a level where I could have understood everything. I was able to write, and I continued. Well, my writing didn't stop there. When I was about 25 years old, I started writing articles for the newspaper, the Grenadian Voice and the Informer newspaper. And people used to ask me, they used to give me ideas. You know, some people who wanted to write but was afraid. They couldn't publish a book. I remember there was a gentleman. I'm going to ask him to stand up just to tell it. He worked at the homemade bakery. And he was always reading my writing. As a matter of fact, he liked my writing. So I am going to call him and let him take a stand. Israel, can you stand up, please? I never expected that he, as a baker, was so interested in reading. A lot of people, they have a book, sometimes they never finish reading. But Israel was reading all that I wrote. And I remember not once, but several times. He said to me, Manal is writing, why don't you publish a book? So I said, well, look, I'm not interested in publishing books or anything of that. I never had that type of, attitude to write. But then he said to me, all right, you're writing every week and a story. I love what you're writing. He said, why don't you take all of them, combine them, and publish them together? So I said, I'm still not ready for that. Anyhow, another inspiration I got was from somebody by the name of Sam Joe. His name is Samuel Joseph. He is, he was an agricultural officer. And we didn't grow up together because when I went to secondary school, I was 15 years old at that time. And he started, he was doing other things like that, and he was in the agricultural office, doing agriculture. So we knew each other. And I remember the first story I wrote was something about everything was falling. Now, I was referring to what was happening in Grenada. That, when I went to school, it was different. Food was cheaper, and all things of the sort I could remember that I related. It wasn't a long story, very short. And I wrote it, and I remember Samuel Joseph was the first person he called me. He said, man, no, I guess what I was saying is that because things are getting expensive, our education was falling apart. We weren't that good at that time. It's only over the last 10 or 15 years we find we have so many interesting and young people, you know, studying harder and doing everything better. So I said everything is falling. The only thing that is falling is the price of goods. And that seemed to ignited him, and he called me and he said, man, what a story. So Samjo isn't here this evening. I was hoping, well, I knew that he couldn't come because he's been ailing now for perhaps about 10 or 12 years. But I've never seen a man ailing and with such great spirit. You know, he's on the phone every day. Who didn't call him, he calls them, because he just loved talking, you know. So I'm sorry that he's not here this evening. So those were the two people who inspired me. There was another group of people who inspired me. I used to go to the barber somewhere just behind Tantin there, and I used to meet students, children, schoolboys, people who have just left school, and I didn't realize I used to talk so much. You know, but I, you know, interacted with them and started talking, and then I began telling them about Grenada politics, because I used to read it. There is nothing about politics in Grenada that I don't know. I could tell you that. I know the good, the bad, and the corrupt. I know all about them. So I spoke to those people. They liked what I was saying, and then they said to me, but we never heard about that, because when I told them about Grenadian politics and things like that, they were surprised because they never knew. And they said, well, but why you write a book and tell us about it? He said, we are the young, we are the upcoming, and we don't know anything about it. So they too kind of encouraged me to write this book, but I never did because I wasn't ready for that. So after I left school, I attended college in Barbados for telegraphy and things like that. And when I came back home, it took me a year. When I came back home, then I worked with Cable and Wireless. People were surprised when they saw me at Cable and Wireless. It's, you know, and even before I left, before I go and study, they said to me, but Cable and Wireless, oh, you're going to be one of the messengers, you know? And I say, well, how you mean, why don't? And then I remember I pointed out somebody who worked with Cable and Wireless. Now, he was a head messenger, and I tell you that that man, although he was a messenger, he was a very intelligent. Actually, he was a pastor in one of the things. I think it was the Plymouth Brethren, and he was like a teacher to me. When I went there, well, you know, everybody in this was the mulattoes. There was nobody black there, you know. So they accepted me. I mean, there was nothing about any discrimination, but they had their own ways. So Davis was my friend. He looked like me. So he was, and believe me, that man was so knowledgeable. Is what he didn't tell me. The things that I didn't get in the newspapers and other things like that, he told me. Whenever we got an opportunity to sit down, he will tell me about things. A lot of people in St. George who were, as a matter of fact, called the aristocrats, and how they must have sinned and the various things, you know, that happened to them. So I had that in me. So he was a teacher to me because I learned quite a bit. And he used to repair typewriters, and a lot of typewriters, everybody were coming to him ringing them. But something that's very significant about Davis that I have to tell you about. At Cable and Wireless, we had cable, and the cable used to run underground, so it was a difficult thing. As a matter of fact, it ran from by Queen's Park through the town, and the office was, you know where, how you call these people was? Oh, just in front of the, let's see, in the sea there, you know, where the, it came through the sea, and just about, what you call it, Hillsborough Street, because we were there. So that was the cable there. But the cable was something that ran underground, going from the sea. It ran to Trinidad, St. Lucia, and all of those things. And we used to have high seas in those days, very high seas. So sometimes the cable would have been, you know, interrupted. The cable broke. And when the cable broke, somebody had to come, well, not somebody, but a ship. The ship was based in Brazil. So they had to take time before they come to reach Grenada and repair it. In that time, we had to do wireless. That is the Morse code, and you're taking things from the air, where you hear boop, 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 and those type of things like that. So I remember on one occasion when the cable broke, and the wireless portion, you know, because it signals you had to decode them. Okay, John. Davis had seen a broken cable right by Queen's Park already. So we had an engineer, he was, I think he was a Dominican and came. So he and Davis went and they said, well, let us see what we could do to see if we could restore the cable. Davis had seen a broken cable already. So he went there and he looked at it and he said, you know, I think I could fix it, you know. So they had to get a boat to go and get the cable, put it together, join it, and thing. And Davis actually fixed the cable. Well, I mean, not good enough to make it permanent. In the meantime, the ship was coming. And I remember after that, our head office, you know, we had a newspaper by the name of Zodiac, which they used to send to all the branches. And, you know, in those days, all the managers were white. So, and because they were English, they needed them, you know, they used to send, that was when I started reading a lot of newspaper too, because they used to send newspapers. And when they finished reading it, it was passed on to the staff. And I used to read the whole newspaper. But telling you, what I was thinking about is about Davis. Now, about a month later, we had a magazine that they used to send to branches all over the world. The Zodiac, they called it the Zodiac. And when I read the Zodiac, I saw in the Zodiac, engineer fixes cable in Grenada. And I look, I say, but wait, this guy. So they gave him, well, as a matter of fact, in those days, those pounds, they must have given him about 50 pounds for what he did. Davis got about 10. So I spoke to the engineer and I said, but how could they send engineer? He said, Regis, I know how they managed to say that. He said, because I never saw a cable in my life. All my thing was wireless. And yet still, he got what they will call the honorarium, and Davis was only mentioned because he helped him. And I said, boy, these English people, how, you know, I couldn't imagine. And Davis, well, he took it normal. So that was how people in those days were looking at people like me. There, I must relate to that at that time, it's the same thing in the bank. All the banks was mulatto, who we call them half white. And at that time there was a guy by the name of John George. I think he was from St. Andrew. And it was in the time when Eric Gary just came in. And as I said, he made us what we are. Well, he didn't make it, but what I mean to say, people began to have respect. And John George was working at one of the banks. The first person like me who worked at the bank. You know, so that was what Grenada was in those days. And it was, well, we have to say difficult, but not so today. Because I have seen our doctors, our attorneys, and people like that. So much so, I remember I'm not so good at hearing. So sometimes, so in a while, perhaps when you ask questions, I may not hear it so well. So I had a hearing problem, and I went to the hospital to see the eye specialist. And when I got in there, I saw somebody, good morning, and I saw them and I didn't know who they were. And I waiting for the eye specialist to come. And I saw somebody there like me, maybe about 30 or 33 years old, somewhere around there. But I was so pleased, you know. And then she introduced herself as Dr. Belfon. I don't know if any of y'all know her. She's young. I'm not sure where she's from. I was trying to reach her because we sat down there and we were speaking about Grenada. I mean, I got embarrassed after a while because we spoke for so long and our patience fallen. Because she got so interested in me, in what I was doing, what I was saying. And I was equally interested in her, knowing that she's an eye specialist. And before, we used to wait on Trinidadians and people like that to come in and maybe visit us once or twice a day. So we have made so much progress in education, and I am so happy for that. You know, not only the education, but in sports and other things like that, you know. So we are progressing, and I would like to see that continue. So to go ahead, I was telling you now, because I had learned, I've been reading all the Trinidad newspapers that came here, I used to read them. All the English papers that came to Grenada, I used to read them. So I got so versed in English that it wasn't difficult for me to write that book because I was always able to write. So I continued, and after a while, whilst I was at Cable Wireless, all the people that I met there, as I say, were I joined the Technical and Allied Workers Union. And after I joined the union, they weren't interested in union. You know, all of them, oh, this, that. But I started pushing, and I became a shop steward. And I was pushing for the union because I said the union couldn't. And after a while, I remember something. There was a strike somewhere at Jonas Brook. No, it was at Hoggins. Eric Pierre, the brother of Leslie Pierre, they had dismissed him because he was a union man, and well, you know, employers don't like union people. I don't know for what reason. Anyway, they dismissed him. So there was a strike, and everybody began striking. We at Cable and Wireless, only a few of us did strike because the majority didn't want to. I, as the telegraphist, I was the person who had to send the telegrams. We had somebody who received it at the corner. And I say, I ain't touching it because that's what the union told us. Don't touch anything that Hoggins has. And they stayed there for a while. I remember I was threatened by the manager. If Hoggins sue us, you aren't going to pay, you know, and things like that. But I didn't take, as a matter of fact, the president of the union then was Derek Knight. Well, you knew Derek, well, a lot of you may forget about Derek, but Derek was an attorney, and he was also president. So Derek called him, and he gave him one, as people would say long ago, one suckers that he stopped saying anything. So eventually, under pressure, Hoggins reinstated Eric Pierre. So because of that, the workers at Cable and Wireless, they said, Lord, if the union could make Hoggins do that, all of them joined up. So because they joined up, the union started to grow because, you know, I was a shop steward. And later on, as I said, I did a lot of union work, and I remember Curtis Stewart later was the union president, and after that, the reason I'm bringing up this is because I remember that there were always problems. And I remember Bloody Sunday. You remember what Bloody Sunday was? The day when Rupert, his son, yeah, the person, the one that executed, yeah, when Morris and his colleagues were beaten up. And there was a lot of tumult and things of this sort, and they asked Gary to, well, do something about it, because the Mongoose gang were the culprits. And Gary didn't say anything. So they started off with what we call a strike. They had a committee, they called it the Committee of 22. And I, as a matter of fact, Curtis Cho, the president, was out of the country at the time. So I had, as vice president, had to decide whether the essential services, I mean, because we had the technical and hard workers going on, they had the electricity, they had the water, they had everything to do, because, yeah. So we went and I decided, so it was then, as a matter of fact, I got a little power into my hand and decided that we were going to have this strike. So that continued, and I continued my trade union effort until, of course, later on, when I became a manager, I had to leave it. But all the trade unions, they still think about me as being one of them, and they used to invite me to the May Day celebrations and things like that. So as I tell you, this is where I got all my training from, and I did as much as I could. So to finish up, what I want to do now is to ask people, especially the young, to keep their head on and think also about writing. I guess all of us have a story to tell, but we don't do it. So the only way we could do it, perhaps, is to write. So people, I want them to engage in writing and to do more about it, so that we, in turn, will become a better place, knowing it all and finding out and doing more things. So that ends my story on, well, I must have told you, maybe I didn't stress so much about Fedon, but you already told them about Fedon, and most people would know about Fedon. And those who are not here and listening out there, if they want to know more about Fedon, they must read the book, and they will find out more about Fedon. But before I finish, there was something I needed to say, but it just, yeah. When you're at my age, you can't be fluent, right? Anyhow, if it comes back, I will tell you. But something that is very pressing now, to me, it doesn't have to do with the book. It has to do with Grenada, our country. Oh, I didn't tell you all that in spite of writing the book, I am on Facebook every day. Every day I'm on Facebook. And because I'm on Facebook, I have a lot of story, not only to tell, but to comment on. Because Grenada sometimes is going that way, the politician going that way, the electorate going the other way. There is no coordination. They do things, they don't tell us. We don't know. I've been encouraging people on Facebook, demand that the politicians see you. Demand that they have what we call councils, so that you know what you're doing and the suggestion you make. I've been telling them that all the time. Finally, I think I see it begin to happen. I have seen now, what has happened now with Trump and his government and what they want us to do, to put what they call spy satellites in our airport. And you know what that will mean to us? I will tell you, because I know what it has done. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and they had a reason. Germany wanted to lead the world, and there was this war in Poland, and it went on, and it began spreading. It spread. The other European countries, fearing it, they joined in the war, and that war became a world war. So, but in the meantime, we in Grenada, when the war started, I was 4 years old, and I hear people talking about the war, but where it affected me initially, everybody in Grenada had to go to bed in darkness. You couldn't put on a light. As a matter of fact, lights were out of, as a matter of fact, was the norm. So now people had to stay without light. So as a little boy, I had to creep and find out, and when you get up in the night and you have to use the party. Yeah. And the reason for that was the Germans were good in the air, they were good on the water, they were good on it. And it was feared that if you put on your light, German bombers passing overhead will see the light and begin dropping bombs. So people we didn't starve yet, but fortunately for us, we are what you call an agricultural country, so we had that. But the things as flour, rice, and those things, forget about it. Because during that war, there was a ship by the name of the Lady Nelson. The Lady Nelson came in to deliver, foodstuffs for us. And the Lady Nelson was sunk right in Grenada Harbor. So you see how dangerous it is for us. So after that happened, we see with little trouble for the little food. I mean, eating with little piece of saltfish, a piece of breadfruit. But fortunately for us, the war ended, I think it was 1945. But if the war had proceeded for another year or two, we would have had starvation in Grenada. So, why I come up with all of them? You see what Trump has asked to happen? That to spy on Venezuela? What they are doing is pushing us in the forefront. So, America is getting nothing. You can't hit America, because Venezuela could never get to America. The Americans have ships all over the place. And those ships got what you call raiders and bombers. And they will get rid of anything that comes towards them. So you wouldn't hit them. This is why Israel was able to mash up Hamas, mash up all the Yemen and all those other places. Because the America built for the Israelis what they called the dome. So the dome is just like the ships abroad. Anything coming, the dome picks it up, throw it out. It never touches Israel. So America has the same facility. So nothing will happen to them. But when Venezuela can't take more, you know what they're going to do? They're going to be trying to get rid of the things that they put to monitor them. So they are going to hit us. This is where this is who getting the leaks. We are the one, not America. So, as I told you, I have been asking people to demonstrate and do several things. I notice they have been doing it. I congratulate them. I would really like to go, but my physical self doesn't permit me to do it, because you see how I can't walk as I should. But I am, as a matter of fact, as I wrote on Facebook, I said, forget the government. We are the people in charge. And for the first time, I see Grenadians, and I told them and I tell them, you know, this is not politics. Forget about politics. What I want you to do is to safeguard yourself. Because if Venezuela begin to send not forces, but even though it's bombers, whatever it is, they must and they should, because this is what is spying on them, so they must take it out. So when the planes come or whatever instrument that they're using for warfare hit the airport, may not be the airport alone, maybe the whole country, all of us going. So we can't fight America war for them. So I asking you, every one of you, be bold and resolute and do not succumb to what any government say. They are the one to protect us, and I don't feel they're doing it. The junk in Trinidad give America permission to do anything they want. They asked Grenada mom, we afraid to open my mouth and say no. Antigua was asked the same question. Antigua said no. Why the hell are we waiting and our government can say so? So I ask your people, if it means shutting down the country, we should do it. Because we are the ones who are going to have hell if we leave. So I'm through with this. So I thank you for listening. I don't want to be longer because there are other people. Do we have somebody to say? Oh, I have with me Dwight Parsons. Now, he is the one who helped me, well, with the book to get it until we were able to, you know, to publish one today. Dwight is going to tell you something about the book and how you can access the book, because it's not only going to be sold in bookshops, but there are other areas that the book could be sold that he will tell you about. So I will ask Dwight to come and see what has to be said. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
I'm walking straight at back, but if not, I do have my little problem. Yeah. Okay, thank you. All right. Right. Jen spoke from it. Thank you, Richard. I mean, Jerry Richard with one hand. I could think Richard always be that type of person. You know, he likes to help. And I always tell people that, you know, Richard is one of our most memorable songs. Because I always say, you know, he took a bank from a penny bank and maybe our biggest bank. Yeah.
Okay, so good evening once again, pleasantries to all. I would like to say welcome to the dignitaries. The names I have is Mr. Martin, Mr. Thomas, Richard Duncan, Mr. Joseph, yeah? Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here. It's a pleasure for me to be here in Grenada to complete this feat for Mr. Regis. I will just briefly tell you about me, and then I will move on to how I met Mr. Regis and how we ended up in this connection here. Anyway, I'm from Union Island. My background is water sports, tour operations, airline operations, part-time writer. And photographer as well, including action photography, etc., pictorial journeys. Anyway, this year, 2025, I left Union Island sometime around April because we had Hurricane Beryl in 2024 and we moved into 2025. So I had to work the whole time cleaning up. So come January 2025, I went back into the yachting again. The first yacht I brought to Grenada was in Hog Island. I went back and I brought another one coming from Martinique. I brought another yacht to Spice Island Marine. On my way off of one of these journeys, I come through a place called Pandy, beach in Pandy. As I crossed the road, across the stop sign, the robots, the stoplights, I met Mr. Regis at the eye clinic. He was asking for some help with his phone. So I'm not going to stop. But when I looked back at him, I saw it was an elderly gentleman, so I asked him, what's up? So he was trying to get his driver on the phone. So I found it for him. So he asked me where I was from. I told him I'm from Union Island. And that is where the conversation started. The man, well, Mr. Regis, by saying shortly, the man referred me to, he said, he's writing a book. But he didn't approach me and tell me he's thinking about writing a book. So I looked around at him. I said, but what the book is about? He told me Grenada from the 17th century to present day. I said, okay. We have a few books online. Our first book was in 2013, where we published through Amazon Kindle. That time Amazon Kindle was new at the time. So I told him the book that we wrote was Marijuana, a Blessing or a Curse. That was pre-legislation in St. Vincent with all the health research, etc., etc. So we wrote that book to push the government to decriminalize marijuana in St. Vincent. And it did actually work. It's a very, very large book, and it's a pictorial journey of our cannabis product in St. Vincent, including, as you may know, they had a lot of incursions with the Americans. All of those, we managed to get the photos, etc., etc. So going on now, when I arrived at Mr. Regis and I saw the book, it was scattered all over the place. Sentence here, sentence there. And I say, Grenada after Fedon. So through the book, I started to read about Bishop. And I noticed the date, October the 19th. I say October the 19th. I said 2 people died on that day, Bishop and I say, oh, Samora Machel from Mozambique. If you calculate the time, the shooting here in Grenada started around 1 o'clock, as I read. That would have been 6 o'clock in Mozambique. On the 19th of October 1986, approximately after 9, the South African government was successful in bringing down the aircraft that was carrying the president of Mozambique, Samora Machel, who visited Grenada in 1983. I said, what? So I started to become more interested. I said, no. So the journey started from there, and I said, well, we have a lot of work to do. And this is 33,000 plus words and more than 260 hours, day and night. He would sleep, I would sleep. I would get up, he will get up. I leave him there, go back and sleep, get up. And that's how this whole book was put together. It's a journey that I never expected to be in Grenada, writing a book for this gentleman. I never dealt with history like this before. And trust me, tonight for me is a poignant moment. I can tell you all that. Being in Grenada, I developed a big stomach, I worked with airlines in Africa, South Africa for many years. I worked the New York Johannesburg route, which was 14.5 hours, because South Africa is 15 degrees south, as you know. It's at the bottom of the globe. And still, Australia is another 14 hours from there. So with that, I managed to get a lot of experience. I've been to Swaziland, Mozambique, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Congo. I've never been to the west of Africa, so I've been going to Africa since 1994. So with all that experience and this coming in, I had to really sit down. I would also like to pay respect to Mademoiselle Laura Gillette from Corsica. She's French. Together we put the book cover together. That's why I'm dressed like this, to represent the book cover. Right? So I don't think I have much more to say, but I want to say to everybody in Grenada, I'm happy to be here, and I'm really, really touched. Because when you're writing a book, it don't finish until you have at least an hour to the publisher. That's how I publish. Pressure to the end. Corrections. Full stops and comma put, they drop out. Including like the drop caps, they drop out as well. So the journey was hard, Mr. Regis. I'm glad we got there, and I'm going to make sure you get the other two. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, Dwight. I know Dwight worked hard. Let's put our hands together for Dwight once again. And he brought all his experience to the fore and was able to guide Brother Regis right through the process up to this point. For those who are looking and viewing online via GBN TV, we really want to thank you for staying with us and allowing us to be able to come into your homes as we launch what I consider a very, very important item in the Grenadian history and in the Grenada tapestry. I want to thank again Brother Regis and really commend him for allowing us to recognize that age is not a reason for not achieving whatever we want to achieve. Let's put our hands together once again for Michael Regis for this, what I consider a very important moment in his life. And all those who would have encouraged him and supported him, and those at the head table also who took time off to come here. We really do appreciate that you took time off to come, and we want to let you know it is not, what you have done is not going unseen at all. Thank you for coming and for allowing us to share this moment. Dr. Philip, Dr. Martin, Prime Minister Thomas, Mr. Richard Duncan, Brother Lawrence Joseph, all of you who came, we really want to thank you.
Excuse me, everybody. I forgot one thing. The book will be available on Amazon Kindle in the next 72 hours. The Kindle book is for Grenadians who are outside who cannot come home. They'll be able to order the copies, or they do it digitally. It goes directly to your phone, your laptop, your Kindle device, your tablet, etc. Thanks a lot.
Yes, it's very nice. And for those of you who have the program, if you look at the bottom, there's a code there, and you can use that code right at the bottom. That would be your connection, Michael. That's it for connecting and ordering your copy of the book online via Amazon Kindle. And of course, we have with us some hard copies, and we hope that some of you can get one and get it autographed by our 90-year young Michael Regis. As we come to the end, once again, we thank GBN for bringing this live. There are refreshments at the back, but before we do that, I think Michael would like to come and to autograph a couple books. So those of you who want to get one to go home, he'd want to autograph it for you as you take one home to your family and to your friends. So we've come to the end. Thank you. Michael, would you want to? Do I have you? No. Okay. Right. That's it. That's it. Thank you all for coming. God bless you. Thank you for viewing online. Thank you for viewing via GB, and thank you all for allowing us to enter into your homes. Brother Regis, you want to come and to do a couple copies?